Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cost Collaborate from Check-In. My name is Samantha Scaglione, and I'm an Associate Product Manager at aPriori. I am joined today by Senior Cost Modeler Mark Dignam, Senior Customer Success Manager Nikita Shaw, and Product Manager Barton Finney. Our session is a little different than anything else you might have attended so far at this year's Cost Insight Conference. We've prepared a short skit where we assume the roles of key constituents involved in the product development cycle. In this skit, you'll see us using aPriori to collaborate amongst the team and across departments, proactively identifying manufacturing defects, generating and refining cost estimates, and analyzing the data. To get us started, just a few housekeeping notes. The attendee lines will be on mute throughout the session. To take questions, we will be utilizing the chat panel on the conference website, not the Zoom chat. Please enter any questions you have on the conference website chat panel. If time allows, we will answer as many questions at the end of the session as possible. If we do not have a chance to answer your questions live, we will respond on the conference website after the session. We will be recording today's session and making it available to everyone who is registered for the conference. It will be available on the conference website within 24 hours. We have uploaded a PDF of today's presentation, which you can access in the Files panel. Remember to come back to this session in the next 24 hours for the recording as well. Before we jump into our skit, I just want to take a moment to walk you through the workflow that we're going to see. We can start with the design engineer. Through Cost Insight Generate, the parts the design engineer is working on are automatically retrieved from the PLM system for aPriori's analysis. He receives an email notification with a summary of this analysis and can click through part links to open those parts in Cost Insight Design, a role-based application with guidance and insights curated for design engineers. After reviewing this guidance and revising his design, the design engineer can update the part status and assign it to the cost engineer for refinement. The cost engineer can open the part in aPriori Professional to review the manufacturability details, refine the process routing, and set machines. She can recommend design changes and assign the part back to the design engineer, or update the part status and assign it to an individual in strategic sourcing. The sourcing professional would use the cost engineer's refined estimates for analysis and negotiation. Today, the sourcing professional can leverage matrix costing through aPriori Professional and targeted reports through Cost Insight Report to identify where and how much to source. Cost Insight Source, a role-based application with curated content for sourcing professionals, is targeted for release in spring 2021. Jumping back into our collaborative workflow, the team lead or project manager can be involved throughout the project to analyze the data from the team's work. She can leverage Cost Insight Report to track value and how cost targets are being met, to identify outliers with severe manufacturability issues and high cost impact, and to understand the team's progress throughout this process. I know I've mentioned several applications: aPriori Professional, Cost Insight Report, Cost Insight Design, and Cost Insight Source. These applications share a single global database that supports secure collaboration so you can access the same scenarios and the same data. This really gives your team the opportunity to take advantage of the curated content and targeted features in our role-based application suite. Now that you have a little bit of background, I'm pleased to present you with our skit so you can see this workflow in action. Welcome, team. We're getting ready to kick off our next big project. This time we'll be working on a drill engine. So if we want to take the time just to introduce ourselves to one another and tell each other a little bit about our roles and how we'll be working on the project. I'll start. I am Samantha, and I am the manager for this project, so I'll be overseeing the project and the process as we go from designing the CAD models to refining our estimates and passing it on to sourcing.
My name is Barton Finney. I'll be our strategic sourcing manager on this project, and I'll be looking at how we can use aPriori to determine what regions we should source our product within.
My name is Nikita Shah. I'm a senior cost engineer. I'll be taking the design once our designers are finished working on it, making sure that the cost estimate has been refined and getting it over to our sourcing team.
And I'm Mark Dignam. I'm a design engineer responsible for form, fit, and function, and responsible for some manufacturing too by working with Nikita.
So we'll be using aPriori for manufacturability guidance and cost management throughout this project. So I went ahead and set up a workflow through Cost Insight Generate to pick up all of the parts as we check them into the PLM system. I know, Mark, you've been doing some initial design work already, so I did set up a dashboard to monitor the progress on this project. Let me pull it up and share my screen so you all can see. I did notice that aPriori detected some major manufacturability defects associated with the manifold specifically. So I think, Mark, if you don't mind prioritizing that as you continue your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense.
Perfect. And as you go through the process, make sure that you are assigning your parts to Nikita once you feel like you've addressed the bulk of the manufacturability defects, and set that status to analysis so we can have some visibility into where we're at in this process.
Okay, sounds good, Samantha. I'll get on that today.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think we're all set. Thank you all for coming to this kickoff today.
All right, so this is the drill engine that we're working on. It's a pretty small engine, obviously. It's just powering a drill. And it looks like I did just get the email that Samantha was referring to from Cost Insight Generate. And it has a summary of all the parts that I checked in recently for this drill engine. And it does look like the manifold is the only high manufacturability risk. So I'm going to take a look at the feedback that I'm getting there and see why this is a high risk component. Okay, so that link opened up for me and I now see my part in aPriori. I'm just going to explore these 37 guidance issues. And okay, it looks like I have some sharp corners and some contoured surfaces. I understand contouring, but sharp corner, just to refresh my memory what that means. Let me take a look at this help. Okay, that makes sense. Looks like it's places where a cylindrical tool can't make some geometry. So let's just see where this happens on my part. Oh, okay. This is pretty obvious to me. It looks like it's in a few of these corners that I modeled. I really just made a simple mistake and forgot to add my rounds in these corners. So this will be an easy change for me. Really has no impact on my overall design. I just really need to make sure that there's clearance for the mounting bolts to go through and clear these areas. So I should be able to add a round there, no problem. And then I'm going to take a look at these contoured surfaces because I'm a little surprised that I have so much contouring. Oh, this makes sense to me too now. So I had added these perimeter rounds really just because it looked kind of good, and also I was working from a previous casting. We're going to try to make this part out of billet now, since it's pretty low volume. So I just kept these around, but I don't need them for my design, so I'll remove those external rounds. But these internal surfaces of the manifold, this geometry is really critical to make sure this manifold mixes air and fuel properly. So I'm going to keep those around. I really need them. So, but this is good feedback for me. I hadn't realized that these would be such problems. So I'm going to go back into Creo and just make those changes really quickly. We can get some new results from aPriori. So I'll just, this is my, okay, that's that perimeter contouring that I had, the artifact from this previous casting. So I'll get rid of that. And then on those sharp corners, I'll just add around it. I think, well, let's just go in and add it. That's a little bit too small. Let's go with a 2mm. That should be pretty decent size, actually. Go with a 5. And I'll just go around and add these quickly. All right, so those changes look good. Got rid of those contoured surfaces, added those rounds. I'm happy with this, so I'll check this in. All right, and I should get an email from aPriori soon with new results. And looks like from the summary, my risk rating is back to low. But let me just take a peek at what the results are and understand fully what I got rid of. And okay, as this is loading, my guidance issues are down to 4. That's good. I think that was all those internal features on the manifold. But let me just check. Yeah, so it's just those 4 internal faces that we really need to make sure that this works properly. So this looks good to go. I'm going to assign this to Nikita, and I'm pretty happy that I caught these before passing over to Nikita because, you know, I don't like to waste her time, and she does get frustrated at me when I make these silly mistakes. So she'll be happy I resolved those. So I'll pass this over to Nikita, and she can do some further analysis on it and really drive into cost drivers and make sure cost is fully captured. That's really what she's good at and what she should be focusing on.
Okay, it looks like we're making some great progress here. The last time I looked at the scenario status report, everything was still in new with Mark, the design engineer. It looks like he must have sent everything except for that manifold with the bulk of the manufacturability defects onto Nikita early on. So she was able to refine those cost estimates and pass them on to Barton in sourcing. Looks like the manifold is the last piece she has left to refine.
Hey everyone, this is Nikita, the cost engineer. I'm going to start by checking to see if there's anything assigned to me. So we'll go to the search panel here. Assignee's already been set to me, so I just need to click find. All right, so it looks like there's 2 things assigned to me. Let me just go to this manifold. All right, so it looks like this has already been costed successfully, which is great. Let's just check the validation panel. Looks like all the GCDs costed appropriately. If we go over to design to cost, great, no machining issues. So it looks like this is a pretty manufacturable design. I'm going to make a few changes to the cost here. So I'm going to go to the routing selection. I'll need to add some inspection as well as a heat treatment process. And we'll also need to add another secondary process. Let's add some ultrasonic cleaning, and we'll apply that. All right, looks like I've got my secondaries added. I'll go ahead and also just make a quick change to the process setup options because I know for this part, the routing strategy will be a little bit different. So we'll change this so that heat treat happens in between roughing and finishing. And we'll go ahead and recost. Just go over to the cost summary here. All right, so that looks about right. I guess it's time to get this over to our sourcing department and see if they can figure out where to source this part. I'll go ahead and assign this to Barton. Press OK, and just need to save, and we're good to go.
This is great. It looks like the design work is done. The cost refinement is also finished. And now the entire drill engine assembly is over with Barton in sourcing. So we're really moving along quickly with this project. This is awesome.
Okay, hi everyone. Again, my name is Barton Finney. I'm going to be the strategic sourcing manager on this project, and my primary goal is to figure out where we're going to source this drill engine assembly. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my search window and see if Nikita has finished her analysis. I'm going to do that by searching for my username as the assignee, B. Finney, and then I'm going to search for a status of waiting. Okay. All right. So I can see that this drill engine assembly right here is assigned to me, so it's ready for me to try to figure out where I'm going to source this thing. So I'm going to open that guy up. And then the first thing I'm going to do is see what regions I potentially might want to source this in. So I'm going to go to Cost and then Matrix Costing. And I'm going to select a few different regions for me to look at. The first one I'm going to do is aPriori China, East Shanghai. And then I'm also going to take a look at aPriori India. And I'm also going to look at our suppliers in Mexico. And for just good measure, I'm going to also select aPriori USA so that I have a baseline to compare against. Okay, great. I'm going to keep our annual volume at 3,000, and batches per year, I'm going to keep it 12. Click Add, and now I've got this matrix of regions, VPs, annual volume, and batch size. And so aPriori will go ahead and take the root scenario and copy it as all these different scenarios with these inputs, and then go through and cost them. Okay, so I'm going to click OK and go do that. Okay, so now that I've gone through and done my matrix costing, I can see I have an assembly in each of the 4 regions that we specified in the matrix costing. And to better compare these costs of the assemblies and then their components, I'm going to go into aPriori Cost Insight. So I've run this report in Cost Insight, and it's called the Regional Cost Comparison Report. This is one that I built in our ad hoc views. And what it's showing is our relative annual spend on the y-axis here, and then each part on the x-axis. And each one of these bars represents one of the regions that we costed in. And so obviously my parts with higher spend are all on the left here, and the parts with my much lower spend that I'm probably not too concerned about are on the right. And so if we look at each one of my higher spend parts, we can see that in most cases, this red bar is the lowest, which is aPriori Mexico. In a couple of different parts, the cost might vary a little bit, but since these are really my high spend items, this is where I'm going to want to spend my focus. And so I'm going to decide that we're going to try to source this assembly in the Mexico region. So if I go back to aPriori, I'm going to open up my drill engine assembly that was cost in Mexico. And I'm going to save a new scenario just so that it's a little easier to compare. Right now it's got the default matrix scenario, which can be a little cumbersome to work with. So I'm going to do scenario, save as new scenario in children, and then I'm going to do Mexico region. And so right now it's going to go through and save off a new scenario for the overall assembly and then all the other parts that are under it. Okay, so if I go into my assembly details, pull that down a little bit, I can see that now I've got a Mexico region scenario for all of my different parts in here. So now I'm ready to go off and try to quote this in Mexico with some of our suppliers. So after getting my quotes back, what I did is I put them into this assembly quotes spreadsheet, and I've just created a simple BOM structure with some of the costs that I did get back from my suppliers, material costs, total variable cost, which is a sum of material cost, manufacturing cost, and secondary process cost, SG&A, piece part cost, hard tooling, and then fully burdened cost, which is a sum of the amortized tooling and piece part cost. And so I've gone ahead and loaded this into aPriori using the BOM loader. And what I'm going to do now is create a comparison so that I can look at my aPriori should cost estimate across my supply base. I'm going to go to File, New Cost Comparison, and I'm going to call this comparison Drill Engine, and then I'm going to call this Mexico Suppliers. Click OK. So I've got my comparison set up, and now I just need to add my components. So I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to say Drill Engine. And here's my Mexico region, and then my suppliers A, B, C, and D that I imported. So now I've got my comparison of my Mexico region base against all my different suppliers that I went out and quoted against. And if we look at piece part cost first, I can see that I'm about 5–6% lower for these ones here, and this one's about the lowest at 4.5%-ish. If I look at my tooling at the bottom here, I can see that this supplier is much higher than me. It's almost 40% more in the tooling. This supplier is definitely a lot better, about 2%, and then the other ones are much higher too at 45 and 65. And so if we look at how that plays into the overall cost of the part, if we look at our fully burdened cost, our middle supplier, supplier C, is about a little less than 5% over, while the other ones are at 6 or more. And so because of that, I'm going to decide to go with supplier C in Mexico. So now I've decided what supplier I'm going to go with. I'm going to go back to my original scenario and close it out. So I'm going to go to Find, and I'm going to search by assignee by name and status on waiting. And I can see I've got my supplier scenarios and then my initial scenario that I started with. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Okay, so I've got a couple things I want to do. I'm going to say in the description, decided to source in Mexico with supplier C. I'm going to go to assignee, and I'm going to just clear it. And then for status, I'm going to mark it as complete. And I'm going to click cost there so that those get updated. Okay, so last thing I'm going to do is just mark the quoted costs on this part. So I'm going to go to my production info and look at my quoted costs here. My total costs, I'm going to put the piece part cost of $126.32. And my tooling was $77.60. I'm going to click OK. And so now that will be stored on the part. And from this point, I'm done.
Everything looks like it's now complete for the project. The whole assembly is over in the complete status now. It must be assigned to me, actually. So let me jump back to my dashboard and just take a look. Now I am here in my top level dashboard that I built out at the beginning of this project. And it looks like everything is just about finished. All of the parts in the drill assembly are in the complete state as far as my scenario status goes. And then taking a look at this heat map again, it looks like pretty much everything that we were seeing in red and orange to indicate those severe manufacturability defects is now pretty much green, even that manifold that I had to point out to Mark at first. So this is awesome work. And I'm looking forward to catching up with the team to discuss how they felt the project went. Thank you, team, for your great work on this project. Now, as we're coming to a close, welcome, team. We're getting ready to kick off our next big year. Great work on this project. Now, as we're coming to a close, it looks like we may be having some technical difficulties at the end of the video, so let me just jump ahead and cover some of the key takeaways from this session. So Cost Insight Generate's automated analysis allowed Mark, the design engineer, to continue his design work while aPriori validated the design for manufacturability in the background. When Mark was ready to review the results from aPriori's analysis, the DFM risk rating helped him prioritize his work so he could focus on parts with the most severe manufacturability risk rating. Cost Insight Design's design guidance helped Mark understand how to fix the issues that aPriori detected so he could optimize his design before passing it along to Nikita, the cost engineer. If you're interested in digging deeper into the Cost Insight Generate solution, you may want to check out the recording of yesterday's 11:20 session, Reinventing the Product Design Process. Nikita, the cost engineer, took advantage of aPriori's shared central database to pick up right where Mark left off. She could search the database to only look at the parts that were marked as ready for her review, and since critical manufacturability issues had been found and flagged to Mark previously, Nikita didn't have to send the part back for redesign. She was able to refine the cost estimate and send it right along to Barton in sourcing. Barton in sourcing also leveraged the shared central database. He used it to start from Nikita's finalized estimate. He used matrix costing and targeted reports to identify the optimal region for sourcing. Barton, like the rest of the team, leveraged status and assignee fields to easily convey progress to management. In his case, what was closed versus still in progress. If you're interested in the sourcing workflow that Barton walked through, check out the recording of yesterday's 12 o'clock session, How to Quickly Evaluate Multiple Sourcing Options. If you'd like to more specifically dig into the matrix costing that Barton showed, our technology showcase today from 11:45 to 12:45 has a matrix costing booth. Finally, in project management, I use dashboards and reports in Cost Insight Report to identify outliers, track progress, and assess profitability. If you're interested in learning more about building out similar views in Cost Insight Report, there's also a reports and dashboards booth at the technology showcase today from 11:45 to 12:45. Thank you so much for attending this session. If you want to learn more about how aPriori facilitates cross-departmental collaboration, please contact your CSM or account director. At this time, we'd like to take a minute, I guess, to respond to some of your questions. The Q&A panel is still open and we'll still respond to the questions that we can't address live offline after the session, so there's still time to enter your question. Nikita, are there any questions from the audience?
Yes, so we have a few questions. I think we have time for just one, but we will be responding to all of the questions in the chat itself. I'll take the question from Kyle. Actually, Mark, do you want to respond to Kyle's question on GD&T? His question was, where in the process are GD&T or tight individual tolerances included into the model or component?
Yeah, it's a great question. Something we didn't talk about in the skip, but so we can read GD&T from most CAD models. It depends a little bit on your practices for applying them, but if you apply them to your CAD model, we are able to read them in. If you don't apply them, so read them in with no extra effort from the engineer or anybody, they just are consumed as we're consuming the CAD model. Or if you don't apply them to your CAD model directly, such as they're just called out on drawings. That would be something that either myself or Nikita would probably do in this workflow on my initial review of costing or on Nikita's initial review of costing. So really an upfront activity to make sure that it's captured on the model.
Thanks, Mark. So unfortunately, we are out of time. There are a number of questions in the chat. However, the four of us will be addressing those, so just wait for our responses there. After this session, if anyone has additional questions, feel free to put them in that chat panel, or feel free to schedule a meeting with one of us. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a great day and a great rest of your conference.